Welcome to Eye on the Illini. This is Mike Cagley. This week, Illinois goes to face the Rutgers Scarlet Knights, a team that in the start of the year, both Brad Sturdy and I predicted would have a good season because they have a good coach, they have a good roster, they have a nice schedule. I did not think they would have as many injuries as they've had, but you're looking at a 6-4 Rutgers team going up against a 7-3 Illini team. This is one of the hidden gems of the college football schedule this weekend. And we have Brian Fonseca on. He works for NJ.com. And as you can see in the background, Rutgers Rant is his podcast that you can catch all of his information on. He is a frequent contributor to Big Sports Radio, and we are so happy to have you come on, Brian. Thanks for being here.
Always a pleasure to chat with you guys. Thanks for having me on, man.
I appreciate it. So as we put this game together, Illinois is trying to win this game and the Northwestern game to get its first 9-win season since 2007 with the Aurelius Ben, Juice Williams, Richard Mendenhall Illini were playing. And they would have an outside shot of getting a 10-win season if they could win out and win in the bowl games. What is Rutgers playing for, especially under Coach Schiano, who I have to say, you wonder if he hadn't taken his little jaunt to the NFL, where Rutgers would be right now.
I think he thinks about that often, at least more often than he lets on. And he has admitted to that in the past. I think the fan base thinks about it very often, and it's hard not to wonder, because if he had waited another year or two, Rutgers would have gotten the Big Ten invitation he always wanted Rutgers to get. And who knows, he had the greatest recruiting momentum this program has ever had. That's why they were Co-Big East champions in 2012. They had great recruiting classes under Greg. And who knows? It's hard to tell. I think this program would be in a much better place now, and they would have not had that nightmare start to the Big Ten period that they did. What is Rutgers playing for? A few things. If they beat Illinois, it would be the first time they win 4 Big Ten games in a season, and this is their 11th season in the Big Ten. It would set them up. It would guarantee their first winning regular season in 10 years. It would give them a chance to win 8 games in a regular season for the first time in 10 years and 9 wins. If they win all 3, they would be their first 9-win season since 2012, I want to say. And because of the Illini success, they're going to try to win their first game against the ranked opponent in 15 years, the longest drought among Power 5 programs. I think they've been itching for that opportunity all year. The one downside of a weak schedule is that you don't play any teams in the top 25, especially when teams like USC, Wisconsin, Nebraska even don't really live up to their end of the bargain. Illinois, I don't think anyone pegged at the start of the season to be the one that gives Rutgers this chance, but I think they've taken a lot of monkeys off their back in recent times. I think this is one they would really like to, because to lead the nation in something like this, it just must gnaw at them.
I tell you what, Illini fans they'll be a little nervous now, because at Illinois, with the challenges that the Illini have had over the last decades, we're always waiting for the trap door to open and send us down to somewhere. So this is a scary game. And I think both Schiano and Bielema are 2 of the better coaches who are extremely underrated across the country. How do you, am I delusional on that? How do you feel about that?
I think I would agree, right? I think Brad Bielema is doing a tremendous job in Illinois. Really, to be 7-3 at this point in the season, building on what he's done in his first few years in Champaign, is very impressive. I think Greg Schiano is the right coach for Rutgers. I think that's indisputable. He's the only one who has had any success with this program in the modern era, and no one has really come close, right? So I think in that sense, he's certainly underrated. And I think he's shown what he could do as a coach this year, because yes, there were high expectations for this program coming into this year. People thought they might be a dark horse college football playoff contender because of, like you mentioned, all the people they had coming back, the veteran leadership in this team, the easy schedule. They start off 4-0, they're rising high, injuries and a bunch of things hit, and suddenly they lose 4 in a row. They're 4-4. The season is teetering. Guys like me and the fans are starting to wonder where the season is going. It's going off the rails. And they managed to come out of the bye week and win 2 straight games, one against the pretty good Minnesota team, and one at Maryland, which has been a game that's been just a complete thorn in their side. They almost never beat Maryland, and Maryland usually, frankly, just kicks their butt. And they go to Maryland, get a big win, get to a bowl game. I think being able to stop the negative momentum at 4-4 and rebuild from there is a really good example of what Greg can do and what he's done in the success, what he can, all the juice he can squeeze out of the Rutgers orange, for a bad analogy.
Before we start into our typical offense, defense, special teams, can you give us a baseline as to where Rutgers is in terms of injury situation?
Sure. So they are down as of last week, 8 guys who are either on the 2 deep, or I should say either starters or like direct backups. They're down their backup running back. They are down 2 offensive linemen at right tackle and left guard. They're down their top 2 tight ends. And Logan Blake, their third tight end, who's been starting, left the game early against Maryland. We'll see how he is on Saturday. They're down their starting linebacker, maybe their best defensive player, Mo Toure, who was injured in the preseason. So just a lot of they're down a starting defensive end, Wesley Bailey. It felt like every week they're losing a guy and impactful guys, and then even guys that are playing, like a guy like Tyrone Powell, who's their second best linebacker, an NFL caliber guy. He's been playing banged up for most of the year. Finally, these last 2 games, he's been playing a majority of the reps. Against Maryland, he played all 86, so he's got to be closer to 100% that he's been all year. And everyone else, there's a bunch of guys have been in and out of the lineup playing hurt. The start running back, Kyle Monanga has been hurt. Just everyone you could think of outside of quarterback, really, and a few the guys left on the offensive line. It seems like everybody's been banged up and they've just been gutting through. Last year, they had a lot of good injury luck. Not really many guys got hurt, and that's why they were able to have that breakthrough bowl season. This year's been the opposite. They've been dealing with some karma's caught up to them in a sense.
Illinois last year had more running back injuries than Brett Bielema had ever seen, and we know how much he runs running backs. It's just crazy how these things turn. So let's talk a little bit about, for Illini fans who maybe haven't had a chance to watch Rutgers play or maybe wrote them off after that 4-game losing streak, what is Rutgers going to throw at Illinois, and probably the heart of the offense, that offensive line? What does that line look like, and how are they going to attack the Illini?
So the offensive line is makeshift, right? They lost their right tackle 2 games ago. They just started a new rotation against Maryland. They moved the kid, Taj White, who was playing left guard, to fill in for the starting left guard. Now that the right tackle's out, he moved to right tackle, and they put in a backup left guard to fill in him. So they're on the 3rd string left guard, and now their 2nd string right tackle. They protected the quarterback pretty well, all things considered, against Maryland. Didn't give up a sack, weren't great in the run game. They gave up 6 tackles for loss and didn't really get much of a push. So I think that's an area where I'm looking at, and I think they have a much bigger challenge against Illinois. Much better defensive front, gets to the quarterback more than most teams in the Big Ten. That's going to be a big challenge for that line. Stylistically, it's interesting because Rutgers last year was one of the most run-heavy teams in the country, and in the first 4 games, they were pretty run-heavy too. Which, when you have Kyle Monanga, top 3, top 4, top 5 running back in the Big Ten, it's a smart strategy to do. But they've really let Ethan Kaliakmanis, the quarterback, get loose and throw the ball more and put more responsibility on his plate recently. And in the past 4 games, he's been tremendous. He's been playing like the best quarterback at Rutgers in a decade, which, to be clear, is an enormously low bar. Like, it's just barely over the floor, to be honest with you. But he's surpassing that, which is what he's playing to the level that Rutgers fans could have hoped for when they got him out of the portal. And he is helping them win games. He was a big reason they won at Maryland. 20 of 30, 2 touchdowns, including a nice long bomb to Dymere Miller, controlling the offense, not putting the ball in danger. I think he's been, to me, the biggest offensive revelation, alongside 2 really good receivers in Dymere Miller, who is transferred from Monmouth, moved up to the FCS level, took a little bit to get adjusted, but the last 2 games has been really good. And Ian Strong, a sophomore who had flashes as a freshman last year, flashes the first half of this year, and then again, the last 2 games has just been tremendous. So Rutgers is probably going to lean on those 3 guys, that quarterback, the 2 wide receivers, and Kyle Monanga just, again, has been banged up. He had to be held out of the game against Minnesota for his own good, because he would have played. I think he would play. I make this joke all the time. With one leg, he'd still play. I think they have to force him not to play. But the fact he is banged up and they have to hold him out tells you that I'm not sure how much they want to use him, how much they want to. They had 1 play action pass against Maryland, the season low, right? So I think part of that is because you don't want to unnecessarily put Kyle Monanga in danger of getting hit for no reward, right? So that'll be interesting. But I would say, for the first time in a long time, an opponent is going to have to worry about Rutgers' pass attack maybe more than their rush attack.
Yeah, that is totally new territory. And of course, in the offseason, Brett Bielema looked like he looked at the last 3 games of Illinois' season and decided maybe they should move the ball in the air a little bit more. And Illinois has had an offensive line that has struggled. They have, particularly the guard center guard gap has not been as well played as individuals thought. And Luke Altmaier has been sacked more than any quarterback in the league. So they are dealing with that. They had a great game last week against Michigan State. Then again, Michigan State hasn't sacked a quarterback in 6 weeks, so maybe that was the perfect team to get healthy against. Do you think, or what do you think this team can score against Illinois when you look at Rutgers and that offense?
How many points you do I think they could score? They've been hovering around. They had 26 against Minnesota, 31 against Maryland. I think that's probably the ceiling. They had 33 against UCLA, but that game was just a complete shootout. I think a 30 on the high end. But I would think Illinois' defense is better than most of the ones they've faced, especially at getting to the quarterback, which can always throw a wrench into things. So I would say 20, 24, 27 would be a good day for Rutgers, 30 on the high end, but no more than that.
Schiano, of course, is famous for good defenses wherever he goes. What is this defense going to throw at the Illini offense that has become more dependent upon two very talented wide receivers in Zachary Franklin and Pat Bryant, two guys who really are amongst the most talented in the Big Ten. And they are also a team that has finally started to throw to the tight end a little more. And Tanner Arkin, who has been playing for the presumed starter, Cole Rusk, for literally the whole season, has actually surprised with a few more catches and even the punt, the fake punt that he took at a key portion of the game to help the Illini. What is this defense going to do against them?
It's interesting because they've been better the last two games. I keep saying this, but they've been a different team out of the bye week. During the 2 or 3 games before the bye week, they were getting shredded to a degree I had never seen. Just guys wide open, big play after big play. I think that's been tampered, that's been cleaned up because some shift in personnel. Again, Tyrone Powell is a guy who was playing half the snaps. He's their best linebacker right now. He's playing all the snaps. And I think that makes a huge difference for himself and Daryl Jabomi, who's in his first year as a starter. When he's the guy that has to make the calls, it seems like he's playing a half step slow, too indecisive. When Tyrone Powell's making the calls and Jabomi's playing off instincts, that group is so much better. And they've been able to defend linebackers out of the backfield, running backs out of the backfield, and tight ends much better than they had in the previous weeks. The one consistent issue for Rutgers this season is creating pressure, or I should say, converting under pressure. They create a decent amount of pressure, but sack numbers are very low. They just do not get the quarterback on the ground, and that was part of why they struggled so much to defend the pass. Now, they can create some pressure. Maybe the quarterbacks and safeties, that the secondary had one of its best games against Maryland, which is impressive, again, because Maryland has one of the best wide receivers in the Big Ten in Ty Felton. They held him to 61 yards, and they all played pretty well. So to answer your question, I'm not sure what we're getting out of the Rutgers defense because I've seen some really good play early in the year in the last 2 games, and I saw some of the worst defensive play I've seen since the Chris Ash era for a 4-game stretch. So it's a mystery to me. But I do think that how they play will determine if Rutgers has a chance to win this game or not, because the offense may win the game, but I think this defense, if it doesn't play to the level, it can lose Rutgers the game, if that makes sense.
Is there any disruptor on the defensive line, even if not getting sack numbers, but potentially doing things like forcing double teams and doing well against the run? Is there a difference maker along the line?
I'll give you 2. Aaron Lewis is the best guy creating pressure. Again, none of these guys can really get sacks, but he's the guy that's most consistently in the backfield. He's been dealing with some injury, been banged up. He's as healthy as he's been in a long time. Played against Maryland, got his sack in a few weeks, and looked closer to his old self. He said he felt like his old self when he talked to us after the game. So he's the guy I look for on the edge. And Keontae Hamilton inside, they've been moving him, from inside to outside to fill some holes when there were some injuries on the defensive end. He's consistently getting double teams, and he's made some of the most important plays defensively this year, including the strip sack against, I want to say, UCLA that I had never seen. Just a single-handed strip sack recovery in one fell swoop. It was really impressive. He's having a really good senior year, and I'd say he's been consistently the best player on the Rutgers defense this season.
Now, Illinois' wide receivers are big, they're physical, and they have good hands. What are they going to be facing from a standpoint of cornerbacks in the secondary from Rutgers?
A rotation of 4 guys. They have 2 starters in Robert Longerbeam, who's probably their best cover guy, and Eric Rogers, 2 veteran guys. And then they mixed in a guy, Bo Masco, who's a redshirt freshman, had a really good game, I would say, on Saturday to defend Ty Felton to a pretty good degree. And then Al-Shadi Salam, a converted running back, moved to the position last year to cornerback, and he's been up and down. But those guys have been pretty good. Robert Longerbeam had 2 pass breakups. He did give up 7 receptions on 10 targets, which is not great, but he did not give it any big plays, and his pass breakups came in crucial moments. I don't think the secondary is the best they've had under Schiano since he's been back, but I think it's solid. Again, the pass numbers were not good during that 4-game stretch where they were bad, but I think a lot of that was the linebackers, the lack of pressure, and then the secondary kind of just suffered from everything else crumbling around them, if that makes sense.
This is the Run My Own Business dream. This is the college is paid for dream. This is the retire early dream. This is Busey, where your dreams and possibilities become moments through trusted guidance and expertise, through lifelong relationships. Because we're here to help you achieve the life you've always envisioned.
We saw that last year at times with the Illini, a young defensive secondary. You put them in a position where they have to cover too long and didn't look good. Same guys this year with a year of experience and with a better pass rush are now looking much better than they did last season. When you look at the special teams, let's look at the kicking from the punting standpoint and from the kicking standpoint. How good is Rutgers?
I'd say average. I think their kicker is accurate. I think if you ask him to kick within 35 to 40 yards, you feel pretty good about it. He had one of the most accurate seasons for a Rutgers kicker in program history last year. He's been a little more shaky this year, but generally has been pretty good. And I think after a shaky start has been pretty reliable. Punting is fine. I think Rutgers fans got spoiled with having Adam Korsak, who was one of the best punters in recent Big Ten history, won the Ray Guy Award and was here for forever, right? So I think he spoiled them. Last year, Flynn Appleby, another Australian, was a decent-sized downgrade from Adam Korsak. This year they have a third Australian, Jacob Anderson, who's in the middle of those two. He's solid. He's not going to hit the ball at the 1-yard line. He's not going to pin you deep, but he's going to kick to a reliable degree. And outside of 1, maybe 2 punts I can remember this season that were just went haywire, otherwise has been pretty solid. And kickoffs, they generally kick it out of the end zone and get touchbacks, but I think that's just the standard across the sport these days.
Yeah, it is amazing how that has become less and less part of the college game. And I don't know with the injuries and CTE if the sport is going to do anything to change that. It seems to be a fairly safe way to have a play and then get people a commercial break so that you can make a little more money. When you look at the return game on special teams, how is Rutgers doing it in that respect?
Non-existent. They do not return kicks. They almost never return punts. They are, if I don't have the stat in front of me, I don't know if it's a tracked stat. Rutgers must lead the country in fair catches.
Okay.
If the ball's kicked, there's Christian Dremel is going to be underneath it. He's going to reliably catch it, and the play will be over.
And Brett Bielema.
I'll tell you this. Sorry, I'll tell you this. Last week against Minnesota, they returned a punt, and everyone in the press box almost grabbed each other. And I think everyone in the stands did the same thing. It was such a shock. So that's what I would expect.
Yeah, Brett Bielema, we had a week like that last week where had almost 80 punt return yards from Illinois. And we were all thinking, besides breaking one here or there, that just doesn't happen. And there is something to be said for, look, fair catch, get the ball, doesn't hit the ground, move along. So I'm not necessarily throwing rocks. It's just something that's a little bit different that you don't see all coaches embrace anymore.
Yeah, I think Schiano and Brett are very similar in that Schiano is very much don't lose the game, coach. Don't make mistakes that help the other team. Control the ball. Do not commit turnovers. Don't commit necessary mistakes. Essentially win a game by making less mistakes than your opponent. And I think that's quintessentially proven in just the refusal to do anything but fair catch kicks.
Right. And you could certainly see that in Brett Bielema, complimentary football. He was using that word multiple times in sentences before it became the big thing that you hear now on every broadcast, whether it's the NFL or college. He's been doing that for the 4 years, and I'm certain that spending some time with Bill Belichick probably helps you get to that point. So as you're looking at this game, Illinois comes in. Neither team has their back against the wall in this, but Illinois is certainly wanting to hit the 9-game threshold. Rutgers is certainly wanting to set a record for Big Ten wins. Saturday at 11 a.m. on Peacock. So people, if you don't have Peacock, you better get Peacock. How do you see this game going as you've covered Rutgers all season?
It's hard to tell. Again, I really have a hard, especially now, hard time grasping exactly what Rutgers team we're going to see. It's just last year I went 12-0 in picking the result of the game, or 13-0, I should say. I nailed every game because I always knew what to expect. This year it's been the complete opposite. I've been all over the place because I have no idea. I saw that in Vegas, this game opened as a pick'em. I believe that. Like this could really go either way. I think Illinois might be more talented. I think that's fair to say. I think Rutgers has more experience and will have kind of the emotional factor. It's going to be senior day for the first recruiting class for Greg Schiano when he came back. And a lot of these guys play key roles, and they feel, and they should feel like they set the foundation for this program to move forward. And a lot of these guys decided to come back for one more year, and they want to leave their mark on the program. This is a great opportunity to do it. Very emotional day. I think there will be a good turnout with fans. It's been up and down, but coming off this 2-game win streak, making a bowl game, I think the turnout will be good. And I think it'll be close. That's what, as far as I'm confident saying. I don't think either team is going to run away with this. It's going to probably come down to the fourth quarter. If you ask me to make a prediction, we make predictions on our podcast Wednesdays. If you ask me to make a prediction today, I couldn't tell you. I have no idea.
This is a tough one because I have a lot of respect for Greg Schiano. I remember what he did a couple times to talented Zook teams, and it was not a good thing as an Illini fan. You say there's not many teams that we can look down on, but Rutgers is one of them. And then they were more than a handful for Ron Zook's teams. I have a real hesitation to go against Greg Schiano, but that this will be an interesting week. As you look at as transitioning a little bit, what is the feeling on campus and around Rutgers for this basketball team that has two of the most talented freshmen in the country? How are fans and how's everybody looking at that from a Rutgers standpoint?
Ton of excitement, expectations through the roof, as you could imagine. This is the best team, or they have two of the two most talented players in program history. And Ace Bailey made his debut on Friday. Dylan Harper's had 3 games under his belt now, and you could totally see why. And I think that kind of just adds some juice. The season hasn't gone really to full tilt yet because they've played Monmouth, St. Peter's, and Wagner, so you can only get so up for those guys. Next week, they go to Las Vegas. They play Alabama. They play Notre Dame, and they'll play a third team to be determined. I think that's when you get some juice. Then they host Seton Hall. Then they play Princeton, and things start ramping up from there. But people are fired up, and people rightfully should have high expectations because this is a once-in-a-generation chance for Rutgers. Rutgers will never have 2 top 5 NBA picks on its roster, on a single roster ever again. And it's a fair question to ask if they'll ever have 1 lottery pick on the roster for the rest of the history of college basketball. It just never happens at Rutgers to have 2 once in a lifetime. And I really think they have to take advantage of it. And I think while they will play it down publicly, I think they understand the moment in time. They, meaning the program, the coaches, the players, they understand the moment in time they're in and the opportunity they have in front of them.
I'm of two minds with this because certainly those 2 players are unbelievably talented. At the same time, the college game has gotten remarkably older. And now there are a couple of 18-year-olds who will be competing with guys who are 22, 23 years old, some guys from overseas who've played against grown men for 3 or 4 years. So they're certainly supremely talented. I also think it's a very tough road for them to hoe when you consider that the freshman-laden teams of Duke and Kentucky have gone by the wayside for teams that have a better mix of youth and also some experience. How is the rest of the team in terms of looking at experience to support these 2 dynamic players?
It's been mostly positive. A lot of the role players they've gotten have filled in their roles very well in the first couple games. They have a 3-point sniper off the bench, PJ Hayes, who gives them exactly what they need. A guy who can hit shots, does not overextend himself, does not force things, he's the son of a high school coach in Minnesota, and he plays exactly like you would expect that prototype to play. Zach Martini is a transfer from Princeton. He's starting for them at the 4. Another 3-point sniper who could play some small ball center. Another selfless guy who is happy to be there and play his role. Jordan Durkak, Merrimack transfer. Northeast Conference Player of the Year has been, to me, the biggest revelation. He's been starting. He's been a much better passer than I expected, and he's this energizer guy on defense that kind of makes all those the quintessential little plays guy, the glue guy, the guy that does all the dirty work. But again, we knew that was coming. He was the Defensive Player of the Year in that conference. The way he's been able to play offensively between being aggressive and being able to pass the ball has been very encouraging. The 2 freshmen, they've been great. Like I said, there's just been 2 concerns I would raise about this team that we thought in the preseason and I think has been not really remedied in the first 3 games. Center position, starting center Emmanuel Ogbole has struggled immensely. That's been a concern all preseason. He's replacing Cliff Omori, who transferred to Alabama. But the silver lining here is that they have a 4-star freshman, Lathan Somerville, who's been much better than people expected him to be right now. You knew that down the line he'd be a great prospect. He's an Illinois guy. He's been really good offensively and held his own defensively. Obviously, all of these kind of assessments will be subject to the fact they're playing low major teams. The real test will be when he plays against Cliff Omori at Alabama, or these Big Ten teams, Ohio State, he plays against Aaron Bradshaw, and when the level goes up. But so far, he's alleviated some of the concerns at center. I'm still not quite there yet, but I feel better about the position than I did a month ago. And defensively, they're giving up a ton of open threes, and that must be driving Steve Peichel insane. They won 98-81 the other day, and he must be banging his head against the wall after they gave up 51 points in the second half. But what I would say to that is that if there's anything he would prefer to have to fix, it'd be defense. And I think that Rutgers fans feel really good that the one area that they're not playing well in is the area that Steve Peichel almost every season has figured out by January, and they become a well-oiled machine. So I think through 3 games, Rutgers should feel as good as they possibly can. But again, we'll know more. I would safely say by Christmas, we'll have a decent idea of what this team is.
This is going to be crazy trying to figure out these teams with all these newcomers, who's going to gel first and then who's going to gel best, which may not be the same answer. Somerville is famous for some of his clashes with Morez Johnson, Illinois' 4-star center. And Morez has played okay from an offensive standpoint, has been dynamic on defense, but he's playing behind 7'1" Tomislav Ivicic. And that is, there's a difference between those 2 players that is a bigger gap than what I anticipated. And Tomislav may surprise a lot of people in the Big Ten. He is much better than what I thought, and he may be better than his brother, who was at Kentucky and followed Calipari to Arkansas. Sure. So that might be a little bit of fun for Illini fans. Brian, thank you so much for coming on today. We really appreciate that. Folks, for those of you who enjoyed this, of course, you can subscribe to IlliniGuys.com, 27 cents a day. You basically get 6 days for free to kick the tires. On the 7th day, the bill comes. Still $99 a year. And the biggest key is, besides all the stuff you get as a subscriber, is you get the message boards. And that's where you can talk to Brad Sturdy, Larry Smith, Matt Stevens, Kedrick Prince, myself. And it makes it more of a 2-way type of system. It's not passive where you're just reading. So please take a look at coming to join us. Listen to the Illini Guys Sports Spectacular on every Friday or Saturday, along with Big Sports Radio. You get the best of the Illini. You get the best of what's coming up in the Big Ten. And, of course, for those of you with a strong stomach, you can go to IlliniGuys.com, our YouTube channel, and see some of these things on video. For those of you with less strong stomachs, you can just stay with the podcast, which are available on any distributor. Thank you so much, folks. We will be back on Wednesday with our halftime live show as Illinois takes on Alabama, and we will have a post-game show live as well. Until then, go Illini.